Hey guys, now this video is going to be kind of interesting because I actually kind of went through this one a few different times, trying different techniques out to figure out kind of which way would be the easiest to do it. But these little squiggly lines are surprisingly difficult because if you try hand painting it with a brush, I'm sure you can imagine how sloppy that would end up looking. It's very difficult to get it to look that clean. Unfortunately, Painter doesn't really have anything in here that is an exact match. We have things that are kind of close. You know, this one's not too far off, but the problem with this one, this is an alpha, by the way. If you use it, and let me make a new paint layer. If I paint it, watch what happens here. So let's say we turn it, okay, and you see, notice how I have 3 total. So let me even fix that. So we're painting 1. But the problem is, because you are literally painting 1 and you can't really force this to repeat, it means you'd have to like scale it down and then almost like stitch together this kind of weavy pattern that really already is not looking too good. It's not bending quite enough. So not very fun to do it that way. Now, what I think is we're going to end up doing here instead is trying to use a stencil to make this maybe a little bit easier for us. We haven't used stencils yet anyway, and these are pretty powerful. So what I'm going to do is first off get this to bend just a little more. So we are using the same one, lines wave. I'm going to take the bend all the way up. Okay, that looks good. Let me check the width. Probably a little thinner. Let's bring that down a little bit. That should be pretty good. Now from here, the reason we're going to use a stencil is because if I come down here to stencil, you'll notice this has the option to do tiling. The brush doesn't. I have to physically paint it. So let's try this out. We're going to drag this over to stencil. Let's give it a second. And you'll notice that with the stencil, this thing is almost like this weird overlay across the entire screen. And it's very similar to some things you may have used before in ZBrush. You can kind of use it as like an alpha and paint through it, which is pretty handy. I want to scale the stencil down a lot and obviously fix the settings because it didn't carry over when I had it set up as a brush. Now let me set up the brush again because I have the brush doing this and the stencil's doing it, which is a little bit too much. So we're going to go back to basic soft. Okay, there we go. We're coming back down to the stencil. We're going to put this to 1 wave. Bring the width down like we did earlier. We'll do a 0.3 all the way up. Now I want to scale this down quite a bit. So we're going to hold S. And when I hold S, the left, middle, and right mouse buttons will kind of control how it moves. So left click is going to be your rotation. Middle mouse is translation. Right with the S button down is going to be scaling it. So let's scale that down quite a bit until it seems like it's about the right size. And then we are also going to change the tiling to vertical tiling. And look what we've got. Thing like HMV, but of course that would give us like multiple rows of these next to each other. So I'm just going to stick with the vertical. Hold S. We're going to kind of line that up right where we think we want it. Let me just click left mouse button to turn that just a little bit. Okay, let's see what it looks like. So we're going to command right click, bring the brush down. I'm just going to paint right through here. Okay, let's just give it a click. And maybe right there. Okay, if you kind of check it out, it looks pretty good, right? And if I ever want to turn the stencil off or just disable it, you can do that in the display settings if you kind of scroll down here a little bit. One of them that's kind of handy is the hide stencil when painting. And I can probably also fade down the opacity a little bit if it's just a little too obnoxious to kind of see through it. But essentially when you do that, you can then just simply move this around and kind of figure out where you want all these lines to be. So like I have another one on the other side, so you know I can kind of space that out a little bit. And again, just kind of click, paint through it, and you can see we get some really nice little squiggly detail right there. And I just kind of repeat that over and over again until I feel like they were all in the right spot. So that's using a stencil, but it's a lot easier, I think, to do it that way. You're more than welcome to try using it, you know, or hand painting it finding a texture online of a sine wave and maybe, you know, getting that to work. But I do think using the stencil technique right here is going to be a little bit easier.